Hello, movie friends. Welcome back to the show. James and I just watched Netflix's excellent new film, All Quiet on the Western Front. We were moved by the film, found it really excellent, and we love war movies, so we thought, why not pair that movie up with Sam Mendes's film, 1917? They both cover the Western Front in World War I, so let's get into it.
Yeah, these films are basically brothers. You know, it's covering the Western Front, the trench warfare that was going on in World War I. This war lasted about, 4 years, 1914 to 1918. And not only was it horrifically deadly, one of the most deadly wars of all time, the world never seen anything like this before in terms of how many casualties there were. Virtually the entire world was involved in this war. The total number of civilian and military casualties in World War I was around 40 million. And
Wow.
The war technology had just drastically changed so much. That's what caused so much death. You know, we had the first aerial dogfights. We had the first submarine attacks, the first tanks ever used in war. We have the Zeppelin bombings by the Germans, trench warfare, toxic gases. And it seems like trench warfare from World War I is a really interesting storytelling device because I think of how horrific the conditions were. And the juxtaposition, I think it does so well with All Quiet on the Western Front in the film, the new one from Netflix, of showing the contrast between these soldiers who are going to their deaths, dying in the mud in these trenches, versus the fat cats who run the countries, the elitists, the generals who are living in luxury. I think that's one of the great changes that they made to the film, because this is the third time that the book has been turned into a movie. The first one was in 1930, and the second one was in 1979. And now this is a retelling of it. And what they did differently was add in the armistice, the signing of the ceasefire as a secondary plot telling device.
We watched it, and I was like, I don't remember the sequence.
So
in
that
the
was
original.
all added. So it's
Okay.
that's all pretty much factual stuff that happened.
Yeah.
Those are real people, like the character that Daniel Bruhl plays, real people who lived and were involved in the signing, this treaty, but cross-cutting that with the battles, with the trench warfare. It worked really well for storytelling.
And the Western Front was such a dangerous area. 17 million soldiers were killed just in the Western Front. And throughout the entire course of the war, the Western Front line only moved about 400 meters at the most, and it kept going back and forth side by side. And in the entire warfare of that area was just trying to take new land, try and take over new land. Both sides were doing it, and it was just like this battle of basically resistance against resistance, and they were just stuck there for years. In both films, 1917 and All Quiet on the Western Front, they do have similar approaches. They were both shot digitally. Obviously, 1917 is famous for its long take achievement. It was not technically one long take, but they shot it and edited it beautifully and seamlessly to make it appear as though it is one long take. And I love the approach. I think it's really impactful, very powerful, because it has the real-time aspect. Real-time in terms of this movie, it just feels like it's happening in a 2-hour period. And I've rarely experienced a film like that. There's only a handful that really actually pull that off. If you take a movie like Birdman, it has the same approach in cinematography and editing, but that takes place over the course of a day and a half. So it doesn't have the real-time aspect that this film does. And to see not just like, and then there are other long take movies, Silent House with Elizabeth Olsen, Veronica, which is a great French film. They're all one takes, but they're very small in scope, few characters. But to see a movie of this scale, a giant World War I film being shot with that style, I thought it was very mesmerizing. And the only reason why it didn't win Best Picture, and the only reason why Sam Mendes didn't win Best Director, was because Parasite came out that year. And that's an all-time movie. This is an all-time war movie and one of the best of the last decade, but Parasite, it really is an all-timer.
Like a top 100 movie of all time.
For film history. And if 1917 had come out any other year, I feel confident that Sam Mendes and the film would have won. He actually won the Golden Globe and the DGA award. So he was a shoo-in for Best Director, but Bong Joon-ho came out on top. And All Quiet on the Western Front, it actually approaches it in a very similar way with the cinematography, but also I like how All Quiet on the Western Front, it showcases the German side, which the story does. And I think it's amazing to be able to tell the story of the enemy side of culture that we fought against. I think it's absolutely appropriate, and it's important to tell stories of everyone involved in conflict. But what this does is, especially with the youth we see, Paul and the other characters, they are completely sold on war. They're excited. Paul changes his birth date to get into so that he can get drafted and enter the war. The kids are excited and elated. The German youth want to kill the French. They want to kill the British. They want to be proud Germans. They want to fulfill the destiny of their culture and their people. And so they were sold on this by the government and by basically the marketing campaigns of the warfare. And then when they get to war, within the first day, they see how horrible of a place it is.
Yeah, that was great, the technical specs that you were talking about, because I believe 1917 was the first film ever shot with the Arri Alexa Mini LF. And then this film, All Quiet on the Western Front, was also shot with that. So that's why not only does it look similar with the cinematography, obviously 1917 is superior cinematography. You have Roger Deakins, the GOAT, one of the greatest cinematographers.
I would call him the greatest of all time.
One of the best artists of all time behind a camera. He filmed 1917. That's why, it looks incredible. It might be one of the best looking movies this century. You could argue that for sure. And then All Quiet on the Western Front, really good cinematography, not quite the same when it comes to lighting and artistry, but they did there are still plenty of tremendous shots in this film.
Yeah.
There are a few shots in All Quiet on the Western Front that I thought were kind of weak compared to the rest of the film, but I would say 99.5% of that movie looked beautiful, looked gorgeous, whereas 1917, that entire film was so well planned and artistically crafted.
I will say that there are some long lenses in Western Front that threw me out. And it did feel a little bit like television-y in a few scenes.
Yeah, but they also incorporated lots of great long takes, lots of great running shots. A lot of these films are so similar. It seems like if 1917 didn't come out, maybe they would not have remade All Quiet on the Western Front into this film from Netflix. And in addition to that, they look very similar, lots of same characters, but they do different things really well. Some things that I think All Quiet on the Western Front does really well with this film, the new interpretation from 2022, is it shows death. 1917 does this as well, but really, I think All Quiet on the Western Front, they really wanted to showcase the death toll, the toll that it took on every country that was involved, and how tragic and almost futile it seems that all these young men had to die in battle and all these casualties from civilians had to occur. Opening the film with the process of what happens to the dead soldiers, how they're basically just treated like trash in a lot of ways, and the recycling of their clothing, the remanufacturing of their bullet holes and their jackets to be repurposed and given to a new recruit that's going into the Western Front. I think they did a terrific job showing what happens to the bodies and how horrific it is and how basically they mean nothing to the people who run the countries, which is tragic.
And the stubbornness of the people who are in charge, because Daniel Bruhl's character, Berzinger, I'm sorry, what's his name in it? Erzberger, he ends up negotiating the peace treaty in the Armistice. He's informed that another 40,000 German soldiers had died that month. And this is 18 months after we saw Paul's first day in warfare, and many Germans died that day.
That was Heinrich.
Yeah, Heinrich, I'm sorry. It was a losing battle at this point for Germany. Like, they had no chance of really winning this war, but they kept fighting, and the leadership kept pushing and kept going. And even at the end of the film, in the third act, when the armistice is going into effect in a few
Armistice. Yeah.
Armistice?
Yeah.
Sorry. When that's going into effect in only a few more hours, that commander still says, we're going to try to take this land. We're not going to go out without a fight. The peace treaty was signed. They didn't have to fight, but they just kept going. And obviously the French, they were in their barracks and they were in the trenches, but they weren't expecting an attack. And then the Germans came up and kind of surprised them by charging at them. The French never expected that they would try to attack with only a few hours left of actual technical warfare.
A few minutes. There's 15 minutes left.
Yeah, that's why I think when I watch the movie, I feel like that's a very fascinating story to tell. Is that final 2 hours?
Well, I think what they're trying to do with All Quiet on the Western Front compared to 1917, which 1917, it's that long take. It's a great singular story of just pretty much this one character's journey to try to warn a troop that they're heading into a trap and following the British soldiers, and obviously just the one that survives to that point. Pretty fast-paced story. Not a ton happens in terms of large-scale storytelling for the war, whereas All Quiet on the Western Front, it seems like it's a very long film. It's about 2.5 hours long, lots of different climactic beats. We have 3 or 4 different battles.
Lots of scenes,
But I think what they're trying to do is to show how drawn out the war was, how much pointless death there was, how so many people just died for no reason, and how no side would concede, and how it just kept going on and on and on. I think that's what they were trying to do with this film, with this character, Paul, who is just wants to get out of there, but he's become a soldier and a recruit, and this war just keeps going on and on. There's a battle, then they think they're free from the battles, then another battle, and then he thinks he survived the war, and then there's another battle. It just won't stop ending. I think that the filmmakers are trying to draw it out to make it feel like what the war was really like for real people, how it just never would end.
And the battles did feel overwhelming and chaotic and unwinnable at times, and you really felt that, especially the first day. I love the first day because in the morning the kids are so excited. They're all cheering and chanting and singing songs, and oh yes, we're gonna be soldiers. We're gonna kill the French.
This is after the opening where Heinrich dies.
Yeah, exactly. We're gonna take Paris. They're like, we're going to Paris, yeah. And they're marching and they're so happy. But then 8 hours later, they're still marching, and the looks on their faces are like, we're still marching. Oh my God! And their commanding officer is berating them. He even forces Paul to keep the mask on because he was delayed with putting his on. And then that leads into finally going to the trenches for the first time and encountering bloodshed and death until that explosion takes place. And then Paul is assigned the duty of collecting the dog tags of the fallen soldiers. That all happens on his first day. And he also finds the dead body of his best friend on the first day. And I thought that was so affecting to show, just in the 24-hour period, the elation, excitement, and positivity the kids had, which they were completely misled and encouraged by the government and by authority figures. This is what you have to do. This is how you prove yourself to the motherland.
The fatherland.
And then when they get there and they see the true despair, the true horror, and the true pointless violence and death that is taking place every single day, and to lose your best friend the first day you're there. I mean, and then it's a great shot where the next time we see Paul is 18 months later, and he's on that caravan sitting in the back of the truck, and his face, he looks like he's aged 5 years.
One of the things I think that All Quiet on the Western Front does so well, and I think is a major factor that 1917 doesn't really do because it's a different kind of story, is showing what we've been talking about with the indoctrination of youth and the exploitation of young citizens of a country, and the perspective of both the youth who, like Anthony was just saying, they've been indoctrinated, they've been basically radicalized, and they think that they're going to find honor on the battlefield. They'll just be there for 6 weeks, and they'll be home for Christmas. You're going to win. You're not going to die. You're going to be a hero. You'll get a medal, and you'll be welcomed home as a hero, and they'll throw parades in your name and your honor. And they're so young, and you can tell that they don't know anything about what's going on. They've barely been trained for this. I mean, even when they're in the truck, the guy, the veteran soldier, their superior is like making sure their weapons are cleaned and cocked correctly. And you can tell they have no idea what they're getting into. And that speech that the superior German, the elders, whoever they are, whether they were academics or part of the military, giving that passion speech where you will survive and you will win and you will go to Paris and you will be heroes, and they're all just jacked up, ready to go. And it shows how ignorant they are, but also the exploitation of the German high command. But this happens in every country, the exploitation of youth, and they're basically just turned into scraps of meat to throw into an army, to throw into a battle. And also juxtaposing the perspective of the wealthy elite Germans, the generals, the politicians, where they're living in luxury and they're eating beautifully luxurious meals. The general, and even the French commander on the train, he's complaining about the croissants not being fresh enough, whereas every minute both sides are losing men in battle constantly. And it's just a great juxtaposition to show the fat cats, which is commonly used in this film, the fat cat term of the people who run countries don't give a crap about their soldiers. They are just literally just bodies to throw at bullets. That's all they are to them. Even they get stale bread. They're literally surviving against their enemies, but also they're trying to survive against the enemies of the leaders of their country at the same time.
Yeah, and there's great instances where twice in trenches, like horrible things are happening, but then soldiers, like when they invade that French trench, they start eating the cheese and food and meat they have there because like the battle's going on, but they're starving. They're starving every day. And the theme of that movie is displayed perfectly by that superior authority figure, the older gentleman who's speaking to all the kids, and he says, He said this war isn't about the individual. This war is about us as a collective, and that's how we win the war. What he's saying is we're trying to throw as many bodies as we can at our enemies in order to defeat them. There's no way we can do this with small tactics. We have to just sacrifice so many young men in order to achieve this goal. And that's what I think one of the main themes of the movie is. And whereas 1917, what I really love about that film, because for being such a large-scale war film, you don't see that many big battles. All the conflicts are pretty minor between a few characters. I love the individualistic nature of the story and the plot. We're following Blake and Schofield for the first act of the film, and then when Blake has that tragic death, then we're following Schofield for the entire run of the movie. I like the small scope of the approach, because every war film, there's big battles, it's bombastic, you see people getting shot and killed in the background. It's chaos, and there's a lot going on. But we've seen that a lot of times, and that's why I found 1917 to be really unique and really special in its approach of showing we're in war, we're going through no man's land, through the trenches. Yes, battles are happening, but we're not like seeing a full-scale war take place, not a full-scale huge onslaught. We're following Schofield, and that's it. And I really like that approach to the film. That's what made it feel really special and unique in the genre.
Yeah, it's really not until the climactic fight where the British are storming no man's land to fight the Germans, and he runs parallel
the first charge.
Across. Yeah.
But even that, we're not seeing people firing. We're not getting 100 shots of people firing on both sides. It's still just with Schofield.
Exactly. So that's really the only big battle you see in that film. But what I also love that All Quiet on the Western Front does, just to keep expanding on that, is, and to supplement the fact of the change in weapon artillery and weapon technology in war, where the first battle that Paul enters, or when they first get to the trenches, they are being bombarded, attacked. The bunker crashing in was horrific. It was terrifying. Just being artillery shelled, because we're learning about the artillery barrage, which is what they do when they're trying to move up a couple dozen meters.
Yeah.
That's it. And people are dying left and right. And you don't even see a French soldier for the first half of this movie at all. All you see is the death of one side of this battle from the artillery and the advanced weaponry of the other soldiers. And then we finally see Frenchmen around the second half of the film. Then some close quarter combat, which is really tragic. Well, we do see in the first opening, with Heinrich, we see. And what I really like about the movie is they kill Heinrich off right away, pretty much. You think he's going to be the hero of the film. And that's what I think All Quiet on the Western Front did so well, whereas in 1917, I was so grateful that Schofield survived in that great bookend shot where he's sitting in this tree sleeping in the opening of the film. In the end of the film, he's leaning against the tree looking at the photos of his family, his wife and children. In All Quiet on the Western Front, they kill off every main character that we know of or enjoy or like. They kill Paul at the end of the film, which I think was really important, because it shows the impact of death. And I think maybe the best shot of the entire film, when Paul is finally dead, we see him just leaned against the inside of the trench wall, gets his dog tag taken off. It's like a 45-second shot, a very slow push-in of his dead face. It's just really important. Again, I think the main theme of the film was to be very anti-war and to show the death that was caused because of the war.
Yeah, I think if he had survived, it would have felt a little too close to the ending of 1917. So I thought it was smart that they killed him off to show that really there was no winning in any way and nothing good came from this. I will say that I think 1917 pulled off the emotional stakes better, because at the end of 1917, I was weeping. Because Schofield, he has to walk through the hospital area, the medical bay, and we're seeing all the men who are being amputated, have been amputated, who are suffering. It's just beds and beds and beds, and also lots of dead soldiers. And then just seeing that after everything that Schofield had been through, like I was weeping, I was crying. And then when he had the talk with Blake's brother, I was just like an absolute mess. And then also Blake's death was horribly tragic. I cried. I was like an absolute blubbering, sobbing mess during that scene as well, because of how surprising it was, and Blake showing compassion to the German soldier who they pulled out of the crashed plane, which was on fire, and out of the compassion of his heart, because Schofield was like, should we kill him? Blake was like, no, just get me some water. Something like compassion will get you killed in wartime, and you thought the scene was just so shocking to see. You thought Blake was going to make it through. You thought he was going to be there with Schofield the entire film. And then seeing him just get stabbed and then slowly bleed out. The long take was so affecting. Also, they literally digitally color corrected his face to make it paler and paler as seconds passed by. And so he was just completely ghost white by the time he died. It felt so visceral and so real. I think it's one of the most affecting movie deaths I've seen recently. But for me, I think 1917 really pulled the emotional stakes for me. I really felt it. With Western Front, I was emotional, but I didn't get choked up. I didn't get that gravitas of flooding of tragedy. It was more of I think I might have been a little too overwhelmed with the violence and so much bloodshed. That might be the reason why I didn't feel emotionally the same way as I did with 1917.
I agree. 1917, I felt way more emotions for sure, for the same reasons. I think just the onslaught of death, which was, I think, one of the main themes of the film for Western Front. That's why they did that. But speaking of compassion was also a theme in Western Front between soldiers, between enemies. There are multiple scenes where enemies are face-to-face with each other, whether it be single combat, hand-to-hand combat, where they almost hesitate, where they don't want to kill each other, but it's basically you have to fight or else one of you is going to die. Who's it going to be, basically? And the one moment in All Quiet on the Western Front where I got emotional and choked up and shed a few tears was in the third act when Paul is running back from the invasion by the French, by the French with the flamethrowers and everything after they were attacking. And he falls into that big bomb pit with the water, and he fights one-on-one with one of the Frenchmen. They look at each other for a few seconds, and Paul's like, he's going to shoot me, but they don't really want to kill each other, but they kind of have to. Same thing happens in the bunker right before his real death at the end of the film. And Paul overpowers him and stabs him multiple times. And it's really interesting to show that despite the fact that he just stabbed this person fatally multiple times, he is terrified to even look at him. He's more scared of this dying man than he is of the potential Frenchman with guns and flamethrowers coming at him. He can barely look at the Frenchman that's dying on the ground. And he tries to make him be quiet. He shoves the dirt and the mud inside of his mouth. But then he feels compassion and feels so bad about what he's done that he tries to clean up his face. He tries to give him some water to clear out his throat and clear out his mouth. He tries to even patch up his stab wounds in his heart and his lungs with a piece of gauze, which is pointless. And then the man dies and passes away. It was very intense and powerful because they drew it out for 3-4 minutes of him trying to save this person that he died with. There's no chance of saving him. And then what Paul does is he goes through his pockets, the Frenchman's pockets, and he finds the photo of the man's family, and he begins to weep, and he apologizes, and he can't believe what he's done. And I think they contrasted so great with the mud that's dried up on his face, how he's basically become two different kinds of people because of the war, and the caked mud on the side of his face is basically he's lost part of his soul. I see that. So I think that was a great shot and great makeup design that they did with that. But it is a tragic moment to see what he's done. But to show the fact that he basically has to, because if he doesn't, he's going to die. And it's
not like they can have a conversation.
Yeah, it's impossible to know what you do. But then it happens in the third act, right before he gets stabbed in the back with the bayonet from the Frenchman. The two guys, it's him. There's a couple minutes before the ceasefire has to go into effect at 11 a.m., the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. And they're just looking at each other, not wanting to fight. None of them want to be there. And they
want to wait it out. You can see.
Cat has a great piece of dialogue earlier where he says, no man on either side wants to be here. We don't want to fight, but we have to, basically, because we're forced into it.
It's a great moment. I think that also what was really, I think the most affecting death that I saw was his buddy, I can't remember his name, was it Jadin, who got burned up.
So that Jadin, no, that it was Franz. Jadin's the one with the eye that dies in the med bay.
So Franz.
Oh no, Albert gets lit on fire.
Albert, okay, Albert. Yeah, Albert.
Franz is the blonde one.
He's kind of like the goofy one, Albert, because first they attacked, but then they had to start retreating because the French overwhelmed them. And Albert, he gets hit, but he can still stand up, but then he can't run away. And then Paul looks back, and Albert gets swarmed by French soldiers. He drops his weapon and he begs for mercy. And you think for a moment, oh, maybe they'll capture him and he won't die. But then the flamethrower soldier just lights him up. And then you see this kid who has been with Paul the whole time. He's just an 18-year-old child, and he's dying by being burnt alive. And he begged for his life. And the brutality of the fighting, I think that was a moment that in that film, I think that was like the most brutal thing I saw in the movie, and it was really affecting.
Harkens back to Saving Private Ryan with the opening battle after the Allied forces finally get through the beach and above the trenches and everything, and make it to the trenches, and they're using their flamethrowers, and the German soldiers, who weren't even Germans, many of them were Austrian or from other countries, who were being forced to fight. They are begging for mercy, but then the American soldiers just kill them and let them burn alive rather than let them be saved by a bullet and from mercy. So it shows how horrific war is and how it changes people so much. And they're really, even though there were plenty of prisoners on both sides in every single war, most people are not going to get captured. They're going to get killed instead of being taken a prisoner, despite the fact if they give up and beg for mercy.
They didn't try to romanticize it or Hollywood it, which I really liked as well. And also one of the strengths to 1917 is the unbelievable cast. You get George McKay and the other actor, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. He was in Game of Thrones. They're both excellent, but then you get this assortment of veteran UK actors just popping in for 3 minutes here, 2 minutes here. You get Colin Firth as a commanding officer. Mark Strong comes in for 5 minutes. Andrew Scott. Benedict Cumberbatch is the final commander who Schofield finds. The colonel, sorry. Richard Madden ends up being Blake's brother. And so I like how, this is Sam Mendes, one of the UK's most successful, respected directors. I think that having him plus Roger Deakins, I think any actor is happy to work with those two. And so they have a lot of pull, and they're able to get like these huge actors who are movie stars to just be in this film for a couple of minutes. I found it really incredible. These aren't like big juicy roles. These aren't showcases. They aren't even they're barely supporting actors in this. They only have one scene each. But I found it so incredible to see these faces that you recognize sprinkled throughout the film. It was wonderful.
Yeah, and both films have great characters. I do love the characters in 1917 very much. I grew to really root for Paul in All Quiet on the Western Front for sure, and I liked Kat a lot. He was very funny, Franz and Alberts. So their whole ragtag crew, that was the main difference versus just basically just it being Schofield's plot in 1917. We have like 4 friends who are kind of going through this together. But I think the tragedy of the camaraderie that gets destroyed when, they're just in their schoolboy outfits with their hats on and they're going to get recruited and they're so excited for the war and they're forging a signature for Paul to go and fight. It's really tragic to see, how excited they are. They think they're going to like summer camp, basically. They're so excited to do this because of their indoctrination. And then day one, when they get there, the one with the glasses, he's crying because he's like, I didn't know this was going to be like. And just to see that he dies the first day and to see what it's truly like to get there. They first realize it when they're forced to get off the trucks and they put their gas masks on. I think Paul realizes it first when he's, like you said, he's forced to wear it the entire trek to the Western Front. But even in the truck, they're very excited. They're like
joking
singing songs and joking and everything.
They weren't even taking the commanding officer seriously.
Yeah.
Like they were laughing. They loved being yelled at in that moment.
It's not until they get to the trench and see what the veteran officers look like that, this is not where we're supposed to be. And both films did that great in terms of like having these veteran officers who've been in the trenches for months at a time, whether it be Kat, who's the veteran officer here, who becomes great friends with Paul in the film. Same thing with
he's the most compassionate person too. He's the one who keeps giving him food at first, and he seems to have like a lot of his humanity. He never really loses his humanity.
I think it's because of the loss of his son. He's lost a son from smallpox, and he sees these are kids coming in 16, 17, 18 years old. They probably have never even kissed a girl or a guy, or they've never done anything, and they've never lived life before. And here they are going to die in the mud, alone, scared, terrified, unprepared, convinced from propaganda that this is the greatest life that they can live. They are the greatest generation, but what the film does so well is show an entire loss of a generation of young men and young boys from both countries, but especially with Germany. Like, they've lost an entire generation of men and boys.
Someone says
families.
that Germany will be empty soon.
We'll be out of men eventually soon. So it's horrifically tragic, and both films do a great job showcasing just, again, the loss of life. But in terms of what they also do really well, production design, wardrobe, props, both films are outrageously accurate and phenomenal. Even like making these actors wear accurate boots that are uncomfortable, and like you can even see when they're running through the mud and trenches, they're clanky. They can barely even walk. These boots that
They
don't
have like
even fit
bolts
them.
on the bottom.
Yeah, they're just heavy as hell. These helmets that don't fit, and I think they did a great job with the historical accuracy for the weaponry, the clothing, the wardrobe, the equipment, and I think it was just both movies do a tremendous job.
And especially 1917, I think, is really special with its production design. And what really I think sets it apart is the epic nature of the film's visuals. And in All Quiet on the Western Front, all the battles basically feel and look the same. But in 1917, every action sequence is very different and very visually unique and interesting, and sets itself apart from the previous one. And first of all, you got to start with the trenches. They built almost an entire mile's worth of trenches for that film. And the trench work is incredible because with Western Front or any other traditional movie, you can get away with using the same trench areas with different shots and angles to make it look different, but you can't do that with a long take. So they actually had to physically build these trenches in 1917, and to build almost a mile's worth is just unbelievable. But then you have incredible set pieces like the bunker explosion, and then you have that beautiful night sequence in that destroyed town with the flares overhead, illuminating everything in the incredible shadows and in the depth. And then you have that river shootout, and then you have Schofield going down the river, and then you have that beautiful forest with the soldiers singing for the other soldiers, and then you have that show-stopping, huge charge sequence. I think the strength to 1917 is how the film visually evolves and changes from sequence to sequence to keep you, I think, stimulated and to keep it from feeling repetitive in any way, shape, or form. I thought it was really magnificent what they did.
I concur. How about we head into our intermission, Anthony, and then we'll get back to 1917 and Netflix's All Quiet on the Western Front. Before we continue, the very best way to support Raiders of the Lost podcast, besides telling your family members and friends about us who love movies, is to use our coupon codes and become a patron at patreon.com/Raiders of the Lost podcast. You get awesome perks, like every patron gets a weekly bonus episode that you can watch and tune into. Only patrons have this access, as well as we have different tiers: $2, $5, $10, $25, and $100 tiers. It doesn't cost that much to join if you just want to pay $2. $10, $25, and $100 tier patrons get access to our Discord where we interact with you every day, have watch parties. $25 and $100 tier patrons get their own custom episode. You pick the topic. We do it for you, just for you Godfather patrons, and $25 and $100 tier patrons to tune into. Chosen one patrons, you are the 100 tiers. You also get an executive producer credit at the end of main episodes, as well as a personal watch party. And after 3 months, you get to come on the show for a fun guest segment. Patreon is the only reason why we can do this show full time. So thank you so much for the support around the world. Raiders of the Lost podcast is brought to you by our very good friends at, you know it, manscaped.com, the leaders in men's grooming. You gotta get on Manscaped. Use our coupon code Raiders of the Lost. That's one word. Get that at checkout for 20% off and free shipping around the entire world off your entire order. The Lawnmower 4.0 groomer, this thing is a beast for your grooming needs. 7,000 RPM motor, skin safe to the touch, waterproof, has a built-in light, wireless charger, is the ultimate grooming accessory. Gentlemen, I highly recommend getting it, as well as their Boxer Briefs 2.0. Beyond comfortable, really cool designs, a little extra space down there for your junk so you'll be comfy all day, as well as Manscaped has 2-in-1 shampoo body conditioner. That's not a thing. 2-in-1 shampoo, conditioner, body wash.
Body conditioner sounds nice, though.
Deodorant, as well as everything you could potentially need for your daily day grooming needs. Even chapstick that Anthony's addicted to.
I use it like 12 times a day.
Go to manscaped.com. Use our coupon code Raiders of the Lost. Get 20% off and free shipping today.
We just got a care package of deodorant and chapstick, and I was like, can I have the chapstick?
And I was like, I'll take the deodorant. Great stuff.
Yeah. Our other amazing sponsor, of course, is movieposters.com. Use our promo code Raiders10 to get 10% off your order there today. They have a huge selection of pretty much every movie and TV show imaginable in their poster library. High quality prints, super affordable. They also have all sorts of sizes, framing, and even backlighting for your poster needs. So if you want to deck your home out with movie posters, or you want to get a movie poster for that special someone in your life, head on over to movieposters.com. And don't forget to use our promo code Raiders10 to get 10% off your order today.
All right, let's do our intermission, Anthony. You ready?
I was born ready.
Let's begin with the movie quote competition. This one's from me. Tell her that when you found me, I was here, and I was with the only brothers that I have left, and that there's no way I was going to desert them.
It's a wicked awesome guy.
Wicked awesome.
Wicked awesome actor. It's Matt Damon in Saving Private Ryan.
Sir.
I have one from a fan, Cole Wiggins. Little Hand says it's time to rock and roll.
Oh, man, that sounds so familiar.
Little Hand says it's time to rock and roll.
I don't know.
Point Break.
Oh, man, that's Swayze.
Yeah. No, I think it was Gary Busey.
I thought I was in the van before they're about to rob a bank.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you might be
Because they
right.
always say it's time to rock and roll before they go in for the banks.
Yeah, I think you might be right. Okay, here's my quote from... I'm not going to tell you the movie, obviously. Okay, sometimes we don't do things we want to do so that others won't know we want to do them. Sometimes we don't do things we want to do so that others won't know we want to do them.
I don't know.
The Village.
Huh.
Talking about, she tells Joaquin she knows he likes her because he doesn't touch her.
Gotcha. Moving on to our movie release year guess. So, like I said, All Quiet on the Western Front has been adapted 2 other times into films. Accidentally said those years earlier in the episode. Can you remember what years they came out?
1930, 1979.
Yeah.
I knew the 30 one. I didn't know the second years. So thank you for the second one.
You're welcome.
Okay, guess this movie release year. Barton Fink.
1998?
91.
Wow, it's that old. Holy crap.
It's really good. I watched it a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in like a decade, but
It's fantastic.
I knew it was the 90s, but damn.
John Goodman's crazy in it.
Movie pop quiz time. What war did Clint Eastwood serve in?
Clint served in... How old is he?
182.
Korean War.
Yeah.
Nice.
He also was a passenger on
Yeah, it's a crazy story.
a Navy 81Q torpedo bomber that developed engine problems and crashed off the California coast near Point Reyes, not far from San Francisco. He and the pilot swam to shore 2 miles away in the frigid water, which is a crazy story.
And when he got back, because of his ordeal, they didn't send him back to war, and then he started acting.
Yeah, he was honorably discharged.
Yeah,
I think in 1953.
Scott Eastwood told that story. It's crazy.
Nuts.
Because if he went back to war, who knows if he would have been acting afterwards. Okay, here's my quiz question. How many times has Roger Deakins been nominated for an Oscar?
14.
Yes. Nice. How many times has he won? 3? 2. 2. Do you know the movies? Yeah, you know the movies.
He won for Blade Runner, and he also won for... Was it 1917? Blade Runner and... 1917.
Hold on, I think I might have messed up. Wins.
Hasn't he won?
Yeah, 1917 and 2049 he won for.
Yeah, so I'm correct.
He didn't win for Skyfall?
Nah.
What?
Nuh-uh.
Oh my God. Are you kidding me?
One of the best looking movies of all time, honestly.
Well, I think Lubeski won that year, so that's a pass.
Lubeski won 2 years in a row.
Yeah, that's a pass.
Yeah.
That's okay.
He might have won 3 years in a row.
Lubeski, I think he did win 3 years in a row because Inarritu won twice.
He won for Revenant, Birdman, and what else did he win for? I'm pretty sure.
Well, he didn't win for his best movie, which is insane.
I think he won 2 or 3 years in a row because Inarritu won 2 years in a row for director.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, hold on. I got it right here. He won for Gravity. Yeah, Gravity, Birdman, Revenant, back to back to back.
Yeah,
never been done before. Never will happen again. But the fact that he didn't even get nominated for Children of Men,
shocking,
is insane. And he also did not win for The Tree of Life, which I think is the greatest cinematography of all time.
It could be. It's really incredible. It's really incredible. All right, how about we move on to haters of the week and the unsubscribes? What are we looking at, Anthony?
Oh yeah, we got some. We'll have a funny line real quick from Keegan O'Connell. He wrote, "When you brought up the General Zod quote, I said on a farm the same time as you guys love that movie."
Where'd you grow up? On a
farm. Samuel Cahill, no news on easily one of the greatest films of all time, The Banshees of Inisherin, which I watched twice this opening weekend. Unsubscribed. And Samuel, we just watched it.
We're gonna do an episode on it next week.
And then he said, "Oh, sorry, I didn't realize it didn't come out in America yet. You guys got it first, so." But I saw it day of, and it was amazing.
Saw it yesterday. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's great. It's so good. And then listen to Lucky. Vera Farmiga plays Kate Bishop's mother, not Hawkeye's. Still subscribed though.
Thanks for staying subscribed. You're right. They're all the same.
And then Evan Mortarana 98 wrote, "What? You don't believe that Prisoner of Azkaban doesn't feel like a movie?" Unsubscribed.
It's a movie.
It's a movie.
We have a great 5-star review.
Oh, yeah? Let's
from
hear it.
Senor Pero. The best podcast. I've been listening since I found them on TikTok 2 years ago. I listen nearly every day and look forward to it. Wow, it's incredible to hear. I had the opportunity to meet them during San Diego Comic-Con because I live right there. So I messaged them on Instagram. They responded very quickly and was able to take my mom to go meet them. And then we got an invite from them to go see Bullet Train in IMAX up in LA 10 days before
I know
it came
who
out with
this
them.
is.
Yeah, we know who this
Brady.
is. Brady!
What's up, bud?
It was truly an opportunity of a lifetime, and I am extremely grateful. There is no podcast more joyful, friendly, funny, and in-depth on their topic than them. Genuinely great people, and I can only see them growing in popularity and going places in the future. They put me onto my favorite movie of all time, Everything Everywhere All at Once, and I hope they get the opportunity to create their own movie in the future. Highly recommend listening to them, though if they make a movie, it better not be an Origins movie.
We would never.
Brady, we would never. Thanks, pal.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Brady. We
you.
appreciate you.
Yeah, and then it was so cool that our IMAX reps, they invited Brady and his mother to come to an early screening for Bullet Train where they had the
David Leitch was there.
and
Yeah.
his wife, producing partner, were there with a Q&A, which is really cool. So that was a really cool experience for Brady to come as well.
Yeah,
so,
it was awesome.
Yeah, Brady, you're the best.
Thanks,
we appreciate
bud.
you, pal. Now, on this day in film history, today is November 10th. In 1940, Walt Disney begins serving as an informer for the Los Angeles office of the FBI. His job was to report back information on Hollywood subversives. Yeah, I'm saying that word right.
Yeah, man.
In 1969, Sesame Street premiered on PBS. In 1990, Home Alone premiered. In 1998, Star Trek Insurrection premiered. In 2000, Men of Honor is released. In 2004, The Polar Express is released. In 2006, Stranger Than Fiction and Babel are released. In 2014, The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1 premieres. In 2017, Paddington 2, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, and Murder on the Orient Express are released.
What a day.
In 2021, New Zealand filmmaker Peter Jackson sells Weta Digital's technology division to video games
580.
company. Can I finish?
Sorry,
People can't listen because you're talking over me, Anthony. Let me say that again. I'm going to run the whole thing back now. I'm just kidding. In 2021, New Zealand filmmaker Peter Jackson sells Weta Digital's technology division to video games company Unity for $1.6 billion. Happy birthday to the late Brittany Murphy and Taron Egerton.
He actually just sold another company for $580 million this year.
What company?
It has to do with technology-based CGI animation as well.
Wild. Now, my streaming recommendation is going to be Fruitvale Station. Just got put on Amazon Prime for November. Incredibly emotional film from
Ryan
B.
Coogler.
Jordan and Ryan Coogler, who obviously Ryan Coogler makes the Black Panther movies since that just came out this month as well.
My recommendation is Burning, which is a wonderful, mysterious, dramatic South Korean film. Stephen Yeun has a great role in it. He's terrific in it. Highly recommend. It's incredible.
Before we continue, we have to tell you about our live event that's happening on January 21st, 2023 in Los Angeles. Tickets will be on sale, if not already, very soon. So stay tuned for that if you want to come see us live in person in Los Angeles on January 21st. Stay tuned.
Hope to see you there.
Now let's get back into our discussion on 1917 and Netflix's All Quiet on the Western Front. And I think that something that All Quiet on the Western Front did really well was show a lot of things that happen in war and that happen in trench warfare that we don't normally see in the average war movie. We get some of this in 1917 as well, but I think like showing the gas masks was really integral to show how horrific this world was and the technology, as well as showing the death of those 60 recruits who took off their gas masks too early, again showing the immense death in the war. The indoctrination of youth is something we don't usually get in war movies. That's why I think it was so important for this film and the story, and I think it served the plot so well to show how the propaganda of the elites of Germany, and again, every country does this, push these young men and these young boys to enlist and to think they were going to be heroes for their country instead of just what actually happened was dying in the mud.
Yeah. Also, the flooding of the trenches was something I hadn't seen before.
That was next on my list.
Oh, nice.
So the trenches were great, but to see the flooding and to show how they're trying to just get the water out, that's the day one they get there. They're trying to get rid of the water in the trenches, and they don't know what to do. The recycling of the uniforms and gear, which we talked about earlier, to show that in the opening of the film with the seamstresses who are repairing bullet holes in the cloaks, as well as when Paul, he's so excited, he's enlisting, he gets approved, he gets his jacket and his boots and everything, he's walking away, and he realizes that someone else's name is on the jacket. He says, oh, I believe this belongs to somebody, and the guy rips it off the tag and says, oh, sometimes that happens. If it's too small for that person, there's probably just a mistake. And then it falls into the ground, and there's just dozens of other names for previous owners of jackets that were there.
Yeah, that set the stage for, the naivety of youth and the innocence of youth, and how young people in this society were so likely to believe the elders, whatever they said, without question. I think modern day kids are much more rebellious than I think kids like this, because the culture is different.
When we have social media,
and technology and internet.
It's different when you're in a secluded country.
Yeah,
all you get is propaganda from the military and the government.
You think that what they're saying is the truth, and I think that's one of the strengths of the film is the lies that the government and those in power fed to the public to really make them believe that what they were doing was just and right, and also that they would survive and come back as heroes, which they knew they were getting 40,000 deaths a month. They knew that they were just sending these kids literally just to die.
Just to stand in the way of bullets.
Yeah.
That's all they were using them for. I really enjoyed how dogfights, aerial combat was literally just a small backdrop in All Quiet on the Western Front. It starts off like that in 1917 with that dogfight in the air, but then the plane crashes, obviously, in front of Schofield and Blake. It brings the aerial combat in the planes into the story and the plot. I like how it's just a background service to the characters of All Quiet on the Western Front, where they're reading the letters and they're literally just taking a shit right there. And there's a dogfight going on behind them, and they don't even really pay attention to it because it's every day this is happening, probably. So I really like that as a backdrop composition to the shots.
And both films did a good job with lacing moments of humanity throughout. For example, like that conversation with him talking about he's reading the letter because he's illiterate. He's reading the letter from Kat's letter from his wife, and you learn about the dead son. It's very tragic, but also the other friend who ends up going to hang out with the French girls, and one of the French girls, Eloise, gives him her handkerchief, which all the boys like take turns smelling. It's very funny. He's like, "Hey guys, it's mine. It's mine." In 1917, has really brilliant moments. Most notably, the cherry blossom conversation that the two characters have while they're walking through the hillside. You really get to feel for Blake, and you get a sense for both these young characters and who they are and what their lives are like. And it's not like forced. It doesn't feel like cheap dialogue or like cheesy exposition. It feels just like you're two people getting to know each other and just sharing a memory from their past. And it's not out of nowhere. It's because they're walking through the cherry blossoms. And also when Schofield interacts with that young mother and her baby during that in that ruined city in the basement of one of the broken down houses, and he gives her the milk that they got on the farm. He speaks French, so they can have a conversation, and just him giving the baby the milk and then holding like the baby's little hand, and there's soldiers looking for him just right outside. The little beats like that, like little moments and flourishes of humanity, and realizing what we're fighting for and what we're trying to protect, and like that these are just human beings. I think they're laced beautifully within both films.
Yeah, and that's actually a baby that she found. That's not even her child. She found that baby. Yeah. And fortunately, he got the milk earlier from the farm right before Blake died. And, that's a great thematic point. I would say that 1917 definitely has better themes about life and the effects of war on a population. You can use the three of them as a metaphor for what's happened to the countries and what's happened to their population, how they're just the families are torn apart. They're all just kind of individuals who kind of have to come together to try to reform their country, basically, because they've lost their family members and they're basically alone now. So I think the thematic elements in 1917 are definitely a little stronger. And, the innocence with milk, that's a great metaphor for the film. And
then the singing scene, just a group of young soldiers listening to someone with a beautiful voice just for a few minutes right before they're charged to war. Just that moment of humanity.
Yeah, we're All Quiet on the Western Front doesn't really have many moments of beauty and humanity. It's just more focused on death, really, I would say, for sure. But also something that Western Front does so well, we briefly talked about it earlier, is the starving of soldiers and how hungry they were, where, Kat and Paul are risking their lives to go steal the goose from the farmer, from the countryside, which ends up being a really funny scene where they cook the goose and they're trying to keep it secret. And this is the first meat they've probably had in a year or something like that, because it's been 18 months. They probably haven't tasted meat in that entire time, because all they really get is just old stale bread. They get nothing because the government doesn't care about them. Meanwhile, the elitists are eating whatever they want in luxury. Even the general, every night he's having a 5-course luxurious meal.
Throwing wine on the floor.
It's like he's throwing it at his dog or something. Or
I think what he's doing in that scene is sometimes wine, if the temperature changes while it's being transported, you can have like little particles in the bottom of the glass. And so I think that he's just like on his last sip, every time he doesn't want any particles, so he just throws it on the floor.
It's terrible. Yeah. It's like a waste of money, and he doesn't even care about his soldiers. Also, that also connects to, like I stated earlier, where these soldiers are literally surviving not only against, they have to survive the war in the battles, but they're surviving against their leaders. Their leaders are basically as much an enemy as the people who are shooting at them are.
Yeah, I think that the character that Colonel, who's the guy?
The general.
The general. I think that was portrayed.
With the mustache and the bald head. Yeah.
What's really great about the portrayal is that he tells a story to his inferior, how he was too old for war. Like he never actually fought in war because it happened before it happened when he was too old, and so he says he like wishes he could have fought, which is such a elitist thing to say, and absolutely no truth behind it, because he also comes from nepotism where his father was a commanding officer as well. So you can tell this guy lived a life of privilege, hasn't actually had to face true conflict, even though he says he wishes he could have seen true conflict.
He does have a scar.
He does have a scar, I guess, but he says that the war happened when he was too old, the war before this one. He could have a scar from whatever, but I do look at him as a perfect textbook example of a spoiled elitist who comes from wealth and who comes from a powerful family.
In high class.
Yeah.
And actually reminds me of Lieutenant Dan, minus, Lieutenant Dan's character is a little more comical, but Lieutenant Dan, same kind of situation where like he wants to die in combat, but force won't let him. And so it's kind of the same kind of thing where that general wants nothing but battle and conflict, and even sends his boys out to die to try to salvage somewhat of a victory on the final day, the 11th hour of the 11th month. Even though there's only a few hours to the ceasefire, he's still sending them out to die, and most of them do die. And what I loved about Quiet on the Western Front was the addition of the ceasefire to the plot, like we talked about at the beginning of the episode. It was just so interesting and disturbing at the same time to see, obviously, our main character, Paul, get stabbed literally a few seconds before the ceasefire is hailed out. And then as soon as the ceasefire is announced, we have French and Germans fighting each other in these trenches. They stop fighting. They're
their
walking
guns past each other,
shoulder to shoulder. They don't even look at each other. And Paul's dying out. He gets stabbed in the heart by a bayonet. And you think how unlucky he was compared to how lucky he thought he was an hour before, how unlucky he is now. And, you can see how much changed in him, too, where this is the final march. And there's something that changed about his face on this final march compared to the other marches past the trenches, where he is just a monster now. He's killed.
Yeah. He's John Wick mode.
Yeah, he's killed with his gun. He's killed with his bare hands. He's killed with knives. And he's just a changed human being. And it's almost like he kind of doesn't want to survive past this moment anyways. Like, what would he be going back to? Same thing with Kat. Like, Kat was talking to him earlier when he's reading letters. Like, what is there to go back to? What are we going to go back to normal life? Like, what are we supposed to do? And it's almost like it's impossible to go back to a normal life after this, even if you do survive.
But then Katz does say he looks forward to Christmas and making a new child.
Yeah, true.
But I think he was a little more disillusioned halfway through the film when he said that earlier line.
Yeah, I think you're right. You're probably right there. But still, like, what would they be going back to? And I can't help but just think about how much Paul changed on that final march.
I also think that, I think they wanted to illustrate great irony. It is powerful irony to have your character die seconds before the ceasefire needlessly, because I think they wanted to demonstrate the futility of the entire endeavor, especially that final push The futility of it in terms of it just completely being pointless, unwinnable, and just a way for the general to feel like he did something. And all it did was cause more death needlessly. And so I would say the futile stakes were what they wanted to showcase, where Paul died really for no reason, and millions died for that same reason as well. And I think that's probably why they went in that direction with the ending.
And what's really interesting about both 1917 and All Quiet on the Western Front is they're both loosely based on true events. Obviously, the wars, but with 1917, Sam Mendes' grandfather, his true story of real life being in World War I was the base for the idea of the film, where he was injured in May 1918 when he accidentally inhaled poisonous gas used by a German army during their attack at La Basse Canal near Bétheny, France. But, he kind of had a similar story where he had to go on this little mission to give information to another battalion or another troop. And he was chosen because he was he was a small guy, and he was able to
he's
hide.
5'4".
Yeah, he's able to hide and get through the areas more quickly without being seen. And so basically it's kind of a loose, true inspiration for the film 1917. Then obviously All Quiet on the Western Front is based on the world-renowned 1929 German novel of the same name written by Heinrich Maria Remarque. It's historical fiction, and it tells the story of Paul Ballmer, who enlisted as a German soldier in World War I with propaganda-fueled dreams of becoming a hero. However, those dreams are shattered by the violent, horrific reality of the wars. Now, Heinrich himself was a German World War I veteran who witnessed and experienced the trauma he describes in his book. He actually even had to tone down the horrors of the war in his book at the request of the publisher. And so it's somewhat of a true story based on his experiences in the war, as well as his comrades and fellow soldiers' interactions, diaries from other soldiers. He kind of basically pieced together the story with that. And the 2022 movie version that we've been talking about with All Quiet on the Western Front from Netflix adds the extra true story flavor. This is according to Decider. That was not a main focus in the novel. The signing of the armistice on November 11th, 1918, which ended the fighting and signaled a defeat for Germany. Through the storyline, director Edward Berger peppers in key real-life World War I figures, including Matthias Erzberger, played by Daniel Brühl, a German official who was instrumental in pushing for an end to the war, and General Ferdinand Froch, played by Thibault de Montalbert, a famously aggressive French general who became the Allied commander-in-chief in late March 1918 and launched a war-winning attack.
I loved those scenes. I thought they were fascinating, and it reminded me of the peace treaty signing in Lincoln and a couple other war films. Because when you think about it, so many lives were lost, 40 million, and it all comes down to this room with a handful of people to sign a piece of paper to make it stop. I think that's such a crazy thing to wrap your head around. Just 3 signatures on a piece of paper, and it ends all this bloodshed and all this mindless warfare. It's just a really fascinating thing to even conceive of, and these things actually have and still do happen.
And the hesitation that even though Germany knows they're going to lose the war, they know they're going to lose this, they're losing men at ridiculous numbers, they're still hesitant to sign. They have to take this 72-hour window to try to telegraph the conditions of the surrender of the treaty and armistice to their government and get approval from them. And then when they finally do, there's that general who almost doesn't sign at the end. And his hesitation because of pride,
the fatherland.
Yeah, Daniel Brühl's character, he's trying to get rid of this self-pride that these German government officials have of like, oh, we can't surrender, defeat. These terms are ridiculous. It's like, would you rather not have a country anymore? Would you rather lose every soldier that you've ever had? Would you rather lose an entire generation of your youth or end the war, which they had to do? And thank goodness they did.
Yeah, I think it was a really powerful moment. I wish we could have gotten a little bit more of his character, Erzberger. I think maybe an earlier scene I think would have helped for sure. But I think it was the strength of the film to add that entire sequence.
Yeah, especially because he was billed as the lead actor for this. But I think it's because he's just a big name, especially in Germany.
I didn't even know he was in the movie until I saw him, like a profile of him, and I was like, "Is that Brühl?" you're like, "Yeah." I was like, "Oh, I didn't even know he was in this."
And both these movies have good music. I think 1917's by Thomas Newman is exceptional. I mean, the themes he came up with, the music is just phenomenal. you can listen to this album anytime. But I think what Quiet on the Western Front did was a little different with their music, is it kind of felt like Inglourious Bastards that time, where there's like percussion editing, which I kind of just like feel. It
felt like Gunfire.
Yeah, so like the drum beats and some like heavy, I don't even know, synthesizer
like
beats,
synth brass.
synthesizer beats and percussion beats with drums to go with cuts, which is really interesting way to tell the story and way to push scenes along.
But also with just even when there wasn't editing, it would just be like a long take, and you'd hear just like a rap of a few drums, and
it felt like
I thought it was
Inglourious
interesting.
Bastards. Like
it felt very interesting.
Yeah, I liked it a lot because you don't really get contemporary sounding music with period pieces like this.
And I also liked the chaotic nature of the music, where you never knew when music would play, and it was surprising and shocking when you heard it. And I think they were trying to emulate what, like, the shock of hearing gunfire, the shock of a battle starting, trying to put you into the shoes of the mindset of the soldiers in that regard. So I think that the music achieved that for me, for sure.
And like you said earlier, it's important to tell the perspective from both sides. And at the end of the day, none of these soldiers wanted to go to the war. None of them wanted to fight. None of them wanted to be there, whether they were indoctrinated and radicalized by propaganda, which they found out what the war was going to really be like. But they didn't want to fight each other and kill each other once they're there. They didn't want to be there. And I think they showed so well how intense the indoctrination and power was wielded in it to use to exploit the youth and the soldiers in the third act, when the general launches his final invasion and attack on the French, a pointless, futile attack, even though the armistice is going to go into effect that morning, still launches this attack. And if you don't fight, you're going to get executed right on the spot, which they show.
Yeah, it's the soldiers are put in terrible situations. There's no way out of it, and there's no redeeming quality to it at all in any way, shape, or form. But I will say there were two things that took me out of Western Front a little bit. The CGI blood oftentimes took me out of it. I understand that you can't, with these huge sets and so many takes, you can't do practical blood all the time, but there were moments where the CGI blood was just like very apparent, especially because the coloring was just so off compared to the rest of the film, or the rest of the image. But then also the color grading on the film, I know most filmmakers nowadays love shooting on digital, and some filmmakers are wonderful at it. And Deakins is the best, and he makes digital look like something special. But I do think that oftentimes digital filmmaking can look a little too much like it's like a television show. And I think the color grading and the cinematography of this film, it felt a little too clean and a little too clinical, a little lacking in contrast. And a lot of the images, especially in sequences where there's just no light or very little light, there were still no true blacks or midtones in the coloring. And in 1917, there's plenty of sequences where the color black is just dominating the frame, just deep blacks and harsh shadows, because there'll just be one or two lights in, and you're seeing the contrast. But in this moment, you're in underground bunkers, and there's only like a couple of candles lit, and there's still no true blacks anywhere. You're seeing everything in the image. And so I was taken out of some of the sequences completely because of how the filmmakers made every inch of every shot visible, and everything was like either the midtones or blacks were raised, which flattens the image a little too much. And I think they eliminated too much contrast from the images. I would have liked a little bit more of a grittier, less clean aesthetic. And you even mentioned early in the film, you were like, I wish they shot this on film. And I was like, yeah, me too.
I mean, even though 1917 is not shot on film, like you said,
but you have Deakins doing it.
Different. Now, I agree. And like I said earlier in the episode, I wish it could have used a little more artistry, because I think an example of this is the flares. 1917, they used flares so well for lighting to make great artistic images throughout some of these sequences, especially at night. Whereas with All Quiet on the Western Front, they did supplement some of the imagery with flares and some sequences with flares doing the lighting, but it kind of just seemed like they just did it just to kind of replicate what they did in 1917. It didn't feel like there was a purpose to do it other than just to have like a cool flare shot, which I get, it looked great, but it wasn't the same effect that 1917 had.
It didn't have the motivation of the scene, because in the scene, the soldiers are looking for Schofield, so they're shooting up flares, trying to find him. So there's motivation behind the flares, but I get what you mean. Western Front seemed like they were just doing it just to do it.
There's a few moments where they're doing it to see the no man's land to make sure no one's coming.
Yeah.
I get that, but there was a few other sequences where there are red flare shots like just pouring through windows and openings, and it looks cool, but it didn't really serve the storyline of what was happening at the time, like in 1917.
That's what makes Deakins the real lighting master, because his approach and his theory regarding lighting is that the light always needs to have motivation. If you see the light in the scene, it needs to be there for a reason. And it can't just be there to look cool. It can't just be there to make the scene look interesting. It has to have a purpose. And that's why his lighting is always the best there's ever been.
Yeah, so I would just say if I had to choose one that I liked more, I enjoyed 1917 more. I think the runtime, it flows a lot better.
Better pace, yeah.
Better pacing, even though, it's not technically one take, but the illusion of the one take works so well. That's one of the reasons why it flows incredibly well, and it seems fast. All Quiet on the Western Front, I loved it a lot. I really did. I enjoyed it. It just got pretty slow at times. The runtime, 2.5 hours.
It was long.
A bit long, and I think that's what they were going for, to make it like contrast the actual war itself. But it did seem it seemed to drag at some points here and there. Otherwise, I thought it was still, the cinematography again was really good. 90% of the shots were incredible, but again, like 10 to 5% of them weren't as artistic or up to the standards for the rest of the film. Versus 1917, every shot is perfect and pristine and framed so well.
You know what I expected the end of the film to be, and I thought it would have made a perfect cut to black, is the second time they go to the farm, and then Paul jumps over the fence, and then it cuts to Katz, and he's just leaning against the wooden gate, and there's snow falling. I thought it was going to cut to black right there, and that would have been the film. I think that would have been a really good ending, ambiguous, just showing like this moment. I thought it was really beautiful, but then the movie had another 35 minutes, maybe longer after that, and I was like, that might have been when you should have ended the film. That's what I was thinking.
But I think they were both they're still really great.
They did a great job. For a Netflix movie, it's really great.
It's one of Netflix's best originals for sure. I think this is one of the best they've made since like The Irishman. I think they've really only made a handful of really great movies, Netflix, and this is one of them for sure. Now, let me give you the critic scores for these films. So 1917, directed by Sam Mendes, Rotten Tomatoes, it's an 89% in critic score, 88% audience score with an 8.2 on IMDb. Anything around 8 is really great. And over 8 is phenomenal. 8.2 with a ton of reviews. And then All Quiet on the Western Front, as of right now, when we film this Wednesday, November 2nd, 2022, it is on IMDb listed at a 7.9, and that's really good, I think, especially because
that's excellent.
It's only about 25,000 reviews. And then Rotten Tomatoes, this film is a little higher. It's at a 92% critic score, 90% audience score, directed by Edward Berger again. And both just really received very well by critics and audiences alike. Very similar ratings, and I think they're both really well made. 1917, I think, is the superior film, but I think All Quiet on the Western Front, for being the third time this movie's been made, I think they did a really great job, and they did interesting ways to change up the story and the plot by adding the cross-cutting plot of the armistice and the signing of the treaty. I thought that worked really well with the story in the juxtaposition of the elitists versus the soldiers, who were basically turned into just body bags to accept bullets for their cause, and the exploitation and indoctrination of the youth, I think, is one of the great strengths of the film.
I completely agree. They're both incredible films, and I think that Western Front, they did a fantastic job. And I do think that 1917 will go down as one of the greats in the military genre.
Also, you have to factor in that we didn't get a chance to see this in theaters, All Quiet on the Western Front, so I think that takes away from it as well. I think I would have had a bigger impact on me if I saw it in theaters, for sure. If they shaved some runtime off in theaters, I think it would have been a much better film. You didn't really get to experience it in theater like we did in 1917, which I think is one of the reasons why film presentation in movie theaters is so important.
It doesn't feel the same when you're watching it on a couch. Like when we started the film and 10 minutes into it, I was like, man, I wish we were in a theater right now.
If you can pause it to go make a snack, it's not the same experience.
Yeah, I paused it to make a glass of wine.
But I was pleasantly surprised by this film.
Me too.
A lot of people recommended it to us, so really hope you all enjoyed it as well. 1917, excellent war film as well. I think it's an all-timer for sure for war in the war genre. Very good film from Netflix here with All Quiet on the Western Front. Really hope you enjoyed this episode from us, everybody. Become a patron at patreon.com/Raiders of the Lost Podcast. Take care.
See you next time.
This episode of Raiders of the Lost Podcast was executive produced by our chosen one patrons: Luke Exelston, Tyler McFly, Darren Singleton, Anthony DeMeo, John Agraz, Becca Keene, Cody Moen, Benjamin Cook, Calvin Cam. Thank you for watching Raiders of the Lost podcast. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button as well, notifications for sure. Listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, everywhere you can listen to podcasts, and be sure to check out this other content we have on our YouTube channel.